I'm Susan Young, and I'm a retired teacher, and I taught for 36 years in the Orwell Village School. And one of my first grade classes made this book after they visited the Young Sugar House. It is called Tapping to Tasting, Maple Sugaring with First Grade in Orwell, Vermont. I'm going to read this little introduction just to give you insight as to what we're going to be doing. Maple sugaring in Vermont usually begins in March as winter nears its end, when the nights are cold and the days warm up. These days are called a run. The length of a run depends on how long the daily rise and fall of temperatures continues. As the temperatures warm the trees during the day, the sap flows up from the roots toward the stems and branches of the maple tree. The cold nights force the sap to flow back down to the roots, only to repeat the process the next time the day warms up the tree. One March day, Mrs. Young's first grade visited a local sugar house in Orwell, Vermont, to learn all about maple sugaring, from tapping to tasting. And we dedicated this book to anyone who loves maple syrup. The maple tree. Maple trees are grayish colored with little ridges. It's best to place the tap above a root and below a branch. Taps. All taps are not the same. The small-tipped taps are best because the hole isn't too big. The hole heals faster, and the bugs have a harder time getting into the hole. Start by drilling a hole in the tree, but not too deep. It should be just high enough for the gatherer to reach a bucket. Tapping a maple tree. Put in the tap first. Second, hang the bucket on the hook under the tap. Third, watch the sap flow out of the tap into the bucket. Put a lid on the bucket to keep the sap cleaner and to keep bugs, bark, and rain out. The sugar bush. Sometimes the trees are by a road, and sometimes they are in the woods. It is called a sugar bush. Drip, drip, drip. Now it's time to wait for the buckets to fill up with maple sap. Sap is clear like water. The sap drips and drips until the buckets are full. It can take many hours. Gathering the sap. When the buckets are full, it's time to gather the sap. Pour the sap into the gathering bale. It takes about 40 gallons of maple sap to make 1 gallon of maple syrup. The sap is poured into a gathering tank and brought to the sugar house. Pumping out the sap. A motor is used to pump the sap out of the tank, up a hose, and into a holding tank in the sugar house. Moving the sap. The sap flows from the holding tank to the evaporator, where it will be boiled. The regulator on the side of the evaporator controls the amount of sap that goes into the pan. It takes a lot of wood to make a hot fire. The fire heats the sap and makes it boil. The sugar makers keep checking to make sure there is enough sap in the pans to make this so that the maple syrup doesn't burn. Outside the sugar house, the black smoke, which is right here, is from the fire, and the white steam is from the boiling sap. Making the maple syrup. A thermometer on the side of the pan tells the sugar makers how hot the sap is as it boils. Checking the density. When the syrup looks ready, a hydrometer is used to measure the density of the syrup. Density means how thick the syrup is. Another way to check the syrup is if it is sheeting off the paddle or scoop. When the sap is finally syrup, it is poured out of the pan into a pail. Checking the grade. When the syrup is ready, it is put in a little jar and held up to some light to check the color. That is called checking the grade. Then the new syrup is canned in jugs so it won't spoil. Yum! Maple syrup tastes great. It is delicious on pancakes, sweet potatoes, apple pie, warm rice, waffles, French toast, and ice cream. And this is the first grade class that made the book. They are in high school now. That was a long time ago. Thank you. The end. Thank you for joining me today and my grandson, Henry, in our family sugar house here in Orwell, Vermont. We're just about to do some more gathering today and start the process all over again. Can't wait to taste it. Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye. I was a baby when this book was created.